It begins not with a choice, but with a feeling of profound recognition. A man's life is stable until one woman's energy unlocks a door deep within his soul, pulling him towards her for reasons he cannot explain. The legendary psychologist Carl Jung revealed that every man carries a feminine representation within his unconscious, called the anima. And when he meets a woman who activates this hidden inner image, something powerful is unleashed. It's a deep, mysterious recognition that pushes him to seek you out, even when he rationally doesn't understand why. In this video, we will explore why your mere presence can trigger this profound awakening in a man, and why this connection becomes an irresistible force that he simply cannot ignore. This is the kind of deep, transformative knowledge we explore here. A huge number of you who find these truths are watching without being subscribed. If you are ready to understand the true nature of this powerful attraction, do 3 things for us. Now, hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a video that could give you this clarity. And comment the single word connection below to affirm your journey with us. When a woman touches that part of him that he didn't even know existed, his inner world begins to tremble. And perhaps you do nothing extraordinary. You don't seduce him with theatrical gestures or try to manipulate him with words. You are simply you, your energy, your presence, your way of looking. Something in you resonates with his inner world, not with his logic, but with his soul. And that resonance is so powerful that he begins to seek you, to desire more moments with you, more silence with you, more connection. He doesn't do it out of will, he does it out of impulse. The impulse of the unconscious, which often acts more forcefully than reason. The most curious thing is that at first, he may resist it. He may not understand why he thinks of you in the middle of the night, why he remembers minimal details of his conversations with you, why he feels something strange if a day goes by without hearing from you. But that confusion is part of the process. The soul does not knock on the door gently. Sometimes it strikes with symbols, with dreams, with subtle obsessions. Jung said that what is not made conscious manifests in life as destiny, and if you have appeared on his path as an activating figure of his anima, he will not be able to avoid the desire to pursue you. Not out of possession, but because he believes in his deepest core that by finding you, he is rediscovering himself. That is where the mystery is born. It is not love at first sight. It is not chemistry. It is something much more intimate, an echo, an archetypal echo, a call that comes from the depths of his psyche, a longing to be complete, to return to the center, and you, without knowing it, become that symbol that embodies what he has been unable to integrate. The reason he starts seeking you relentlessly is not because you are missing something from him. It's because something in you reminds him of what has always been missing within himself, and he doesn't know how to explain it. He only knows that he needs you near. In many cases, this type of connection does not arise in the common scenarios of romance. It's not when you try to impress him, it's not when you seek him out. It is often when you withdraw, when you stop insisting, when you disappear. Because it is in that void, in that absence, that his unconscious screams the loudest. And then he begins to see you everywhere, in songs, in smells, in fragments of conversations. You have activated him, even if he doesn't understand it yet. That is where his search begins, and that search may seem irrational to you. He might write to you with senseless excuses. He might approach you with pretexts, pretending he wants something superficial. But behind every word, there is something much deeper, the urgency to reconnect with. That part of him that you have made vibrate. This process is not always conscious. In fact, it rarely is, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. Jung explained that when a person comes into contact with their archetypes, with the forces of the collective unconscious, life begins to transform. Nothing is ever the same again. So, if you feel that a man began to seek you for no apparent reason, If you notice that something changed in his attitude without a clear cause, it is likely that you have touched that deep part of his soul, and that experience makes him restless. It pushes him to seek answers, to seek you. But here is something important. Not all men are prepared to deal with what you represent. Sometimes when the anima is activated with too much intensity, the man feels fear, because what he is experiencing is not just any emotion, it is an awakening. And awakening hurts, it destabilizes, it forces him to see his life from another perspective, and that can make him approach or run away. But if he runs, he will return, because he is not running from you. He is running from what has been awakened within him. And the more time he spends away from you, the stronger that impulse becomes, because the soul does not forget, the unconscious does not rest, and you are already part of his internal landscape. In some corner of his mind, he begins to reconstruct your image. He doesn't just remember it, he reconfigures it, turns you into a myth, turns you into a symbol. You are no longer just the person with whom he shared words, glances, or moments. You are now an internal figure that appears in his psychic world like a beacon, a point that orients him, that gives him direction even when he feels lost. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the soul's ability to integrate two apparently opposite realities. In this case, you represent a bridge between his rational life and his unexplored emotional world. It is no coincidence that he started thinking about you frequently just when he least expected it. Your presence somehow forced him to look within, but it is not just desire, it is transformation. There is a change brewing in his identity. You have touched a wound, perhaps unintentionally, an old wound, sometimes related to his mother, to his history, to the feminine that has been repressed or denied for years. And that wound, once it bleeds, also begins to heal, because the figure of the anima not only fascinates, it also confronts. And you, by appearing, become a mirror of what he needs to reconcile. The fascinating thing is that he can go on with his life as if nothing happened, work, socialize, go out with other people. But the connection he has felt with you does not disappear, because it is not something that is seen, touched, or explained. It is something that is experienced as a call, a kind of internal music that cannot stop playing. And then he begins to ask himself things he never questioned before. Why? Did he feel at ease with you without effort? Why was there a sense of recognition without a history? Why was everything so natural and at the same time so profound? That is where the soul begins to speak. Jung stated that the most important encounters have already been decided by the souls long before the bodies see each other. And when he met you, even if it was briefly or in less than romantic circumstances, something inside him already knew that you were going to stir him. It is not coincidence, it is synchronicity. And the curious thing is that the more he tries to rationalize it, the more he sinks into the mystery. Because the soul does not act with logic, it acts with symbols, with images, with sensations. And you, without intending to, became a symbol for him, a symbol of the feminine, the divine, of connection, of totality. As time goes by, that man begins to find you in his dreams, not always with your face, but with your energy, and he dreams of you without understanding why. Because the unconscious seeks ways to bring the repressed to consciousness, and dreams are its most delicate and at the same time most brutal way of communicating what the ego does not want to accept. And there you are, appearing as a figure in his shadow, not in the darkness, but in that part of himself that he had not wanted to look at. You make him think about his capacity to love, about his need for authentic intimacy, about his fear of being vulnerable. It is then that the internal conflict begins. On one hand, his mind tells him he should forget you, move on with his life, seek simpler, more predictable relationships. But on the other hand, there is a force that pushes him towards you, an energy that drags him without permission, and the more he fights against it, the stronger it becomes, because it is not you he doesn't want to face, it is himself. That is the Jungian paradox. You are not the cause of his transformation. You are the catalyst, the spark, the figure that has ignited the flame of change. And sometimes that change is so intense that he needs to distance himself, not because he feels nothing, but because he feels too much, because you represent a part of his soul that he has not learned to embrace. And love, when it is authentic, not only makes one fall in love, it also destabilizes. You are not in his mind as an idea. You are in his psyche as an archetype. And archetypes are not forgotten. They are integrated. That is why he starts to seek you, but not always directly. Sometimes he does it through excuses, sometimes through silences, sometimes by watching you on social media without daring to write, or by asking about you without you knowing. Because the search of the soul is not always visible, but it is constant. And if you have felt that his energy has not gone away, that there is an invisible thread that still connects you, you are not imagining things. What you are feeling is real, because the connections of the soul are not broken by distance or time. They only strengthen when there is truth. Deep down, what he seeks by seeking you is not simply you. It is the version of himself that awakens when he is with you, because you don't just appeal to him, you reveal him, you remind him. And that, for the soul, is irresistible. Something fundamental happens inside him when he begins to seek you without knowing exactly what drives him. And that is, even if he doesn't understand it, he is not responding to a superficial need, but to a deep need for integration. Jung explained that every human being, consciously or unconsciously, seeks to complete themselves, not with another person, but through the confrontation with the internal figures that represent what has been denied, repressed, or ignored. You, without intending it, become an initiator, not in an external role, but within his symbolic world. There is a part of his soul that had been dormant for a long time, waiting for that stimulus that only an archetypal energy could awaken. It is not about you as an individual only, but about what you awaken in him as a representation, intuition, tenderness, creative chaos, emotional depth, all qualities of the anima that men often learn to silence in their upbringing. And it is then that his world begins to destructure. He may feel confused, even irritated, because he has spent a long time believing that his decisions were controlled by logic, reason, linear thinking. But now you appear not as a body, but as a symbol, and everything becomes more abstract, more intuitive, more emotional, and that is threatening to him, but at the same time, magnetic. He is not in love as he would be with any other person. He is activated, mobilized, deeply shaken by a phenomenon that transcends the everyday. He finds himself trapped between what he feels and what he doesn't understand. And that is why he returns, that is why he seeks, because that part that has awakened in him will not leave him in peace until he listens to it, until he explores it. This type of attraction does not obey rules. It does not follow predictable patterns, because it is not moved by need, but by the psychic process of the soul that wants to be completed. And the fascinating thing is that even if you are not physically present, he continues to seek you, not necessarily in you, but in others, projecting what he cannot comprehend, feeling frustration when he does not find that same resonance. It is here that another deep dimension appears. The frustration of the irreplaceable. He may try to distract himself, rationalize, even convince himself that it wasn't a big deal. But something inside him has already changed. And when the soul changes, there is no going back. Because it was not your presence that transformed him, but your energy. And energy does not disappear, it only transforms. Carl Jung said that what you resist persists, and this man may resist the memory, he may resist the emotion, he may even resist the impulse to return to you. But the more he represses it, the stronger the internal connection becomes, because you have ceased to be an external person. You have come to inhabit his inner world. And then he begins to live between two worlds, the one outside that pushes him to go on with his life as if nothing happened, and the one inside that confronts him with the unresolved, with the unsaid, with the intensely felt. At this point, the search is no longer voluntary. It becomes a dance between the conscious and the unconscious, and you are the thread that guides him through the labyrinth. Perhaps he doesn't know it yet, but in this dance, he is beginning a process of individuation, a path of self-knowledge that, according to Jung, is the most sacred a human being can undertake, because it is no longer about loving you or having you. It is about discovering what part of himself is activated when he thinks of you, what areas of his soul are illuminated when he remembers you. And it is possible that he resists the process, that he takes refuge in his routine, that he tries to ignore what he feels. But the energies of the soul are not extinguished by willpower. They manifest on other planes, in inexplicable moods, in voids that are not filled, in silences that hurt more than noise. It is not an obsession, it is a calling. And that call is not made by you, it is made by his soul. But his soul has chosen your image to speak to him, your essence to remind him of who he is, your vibration to pull him out of his lethargy. And did you know this? Probably not, because these connections also do not obey the conscious logic of the one who provokes them. Many times, you were just being you, without strategy, without expectations, without searching, and right there, in that state of authenticity, you touched his soul, and since then he has not been able to forget you. It is not a traditional romantic story, it is a symbolic process of inner transformation. You did not come to complete his life, you came to reveal his own emptiness, and that, although he may not confess it, is guiding him back to you. There is a silent truth that few people dare to face head-on. When someone stirs our soul, no explanation is needed. It just happens, and it has happened to him with you, not on the superficial plane of immediate attraction, but in that deep zone where the symbols that govern our lives reside without our knowing. And when a symbol is activated from within, it cannot be forgotten, it cannot be ignored, because it is already part of the psychic fabric that gives meaning to his existence. The symbol that you represent for him is not static. It mutates as he goes through his own transformation. At first, he may have felt you as a spark, something that disconcerted him, then as an enigma, something that unsettled him, and then as an absence that cannot be filled with anything else. And that is where the principle of totality comes into play. Jung postulated that the human soul, in its process of development, tends towards the integration of its opposites, the masculine with the feminine, the conscious with the unconscious, the rational with the emotional. And you, without seeking it, embody the point of union of these opposites within him. Not because you are the solution, but because you activate the question. The desire that begins to grow in him is no longer about possessing, conquering, or obtaining a clear answer. It is a much deeper desire, that of understanding, but not understanding you, understanding himself through you, because you function as a symbolic mirror. Every time he remembers you, he sees himself reflected, but he doesn't see himself as he is. He sees himself as he could become if he had the courage to integrate himself completely. And that, although it may seem subtle, is an internal revolution. He begins to notice it in small things, changes in his emotions, a sensitivity he didn't have before, an introspection that makes him uncomfortable, insecurities that disorient him, and also flashes of a peace he had never felt, even if brief, even if he cannot explain it. because you not only confront him with his shadow, you also give him a vision of his light. And that is the most unsettling thing of all. It is not just that you have touched him, it is that you have revealed him. You force him to feel. And feeling, for many men, is not an everyday thing. It is something that for years has been judged, repressed, postponed. But when the soul decides it is time to awaken, it does so without asking permission. And your presence was the key that opened that door. He begins to seek you like someone looking for an answer to a question he has not yet formulated. He may do it clumsily, with long silences, with brief messages, with distances he doesn't understand. But behind every attempt at connection, there is a seed, an impulse that is born from the deepest part of his being, pushing him towards what his soul intuits as necessary for its evolution. It is not romantic love, it is not attachment, it is destiny. And that destiny has more to do with his growth than with your company. Sometimes souls cross paths to light fires they did not know existed. You are not his home. You are the fire that forces him to rebuild himself from the ashes. And although this may sound poetic, for him it is painfully real. He begins to see the world differently. He no longer enjoys the same things. He no longer laughs the same way. He no longer feels fulfilled in situations where he once felt secure. Because you have broken the internal narrative with which he had learned to protect himself from pain, from intimacy, from vulnerability. And that is why he seeks you, not for you to save him, but because he intuits, even if he doesn't know it in words, that in you there is something that connects him with his truth. And the further he gets from you, the louder his soul becomes. It is not about control. It is not about insistence. It is about an emotional memory that cannot be erased, an energetic footprint that has been imprinted, not in his mind, but in his psyche, in his most intimate structure. And in that footprint you remain alive. Because it is not about forgetting a conversation, it is about having felt in your presence something so real that everything else becomes blurry. He may not be ready yet for what you represent. He may be afraid, but the process has already begun. And that process, once initiated, never stops. It only transforms. Sooner or later, he will return to you, not as one seeking a woman, but as one seeking a guide, a door, a symbol of what his soul is trying to recover. And when he does, he will not expect to find you the same, because you will have changed too. And perhaps, while he goes through all that internal turmoil, you have also felt something similar, not in the same form, but with the same intensity. Maybe without understanding why, you also thought of him more times than you wanted to admit. You also felt that his presence was not something casual, nor light, nor fleeting. Deep down, you were both touched by something bigger than the two of you, a force that cannot be seen, but can be felt, that cannot be explained, but can be recognized. A kind of language of the soul that is only activated when two paths were destined to cross, to reveal dormant, hidden, essential parts. It doesn't matter if he hasn't said the words, because you now understand a deeper truth. On the level where souls speak without sound, he is already returning. You were never just another chapter. You were the page he can't tear out, the key that opened the door to himself. To honor this profound connection, we invite you to make a declaration. Go to the comments and write the powerful words, "I am the key." Let this be your testament to the truth that real connections are not explained, they are felt. If this message resonated deep within you, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not imagining things. A huge number of people who feel these truths are watching without being subscribed. If you are ready to continue this journey and multiply this truth, take a moment to subscribe and activate the bell so you never miss our next exploration. Remember, your presence here is not a coincidence. Perhaps right now, in this very moment, he is also thinking of you, because when the soul begins to remember, distance no longer matters only the encounter, and that encounter begins when you finally decide to respond.